And that is, we stood up last summer. This will be our second iteration, and it'll be completely into it next summer, to take the rising firsties after graduation into a 3-week experience on a contemporary battlefield. What's different than the Buckner experience? Well, first of all, we're putting them out there with less than a year to go before the commissioner and have to engage in these kinds of things. They worked out of a forward operating base similar to Iraq and Afghanistan. We brought in and have been bringing in Iraqi Americans from this last year. We're primarily just outside of Detroit and Dallas to do this. It's interactive. There is one officer NCO for every 3 cadets. It's very much like Ranger School. You have your squad. One leader is going to plan it. Somebody the next day preparation for the fight. The next day execution, and the assessment goes on. And as the event unfolds, things occur based on the complexity and how the cadets are doing, and they get assessed on their leadership skills as time goes on. It was used last year. It was the first time we did it. 300 firsties went through. Going in, they labeled it a Camp Buckner do-over. But they came out of it saying everybody ought to have this experience. We'll have 600 go through this summer, and next year will be in full operation with everybody going through. Next slide. So this kind of gives you a view of what we look like now. We'll continue to do this. Our staff and faculty, the rotating faculty, as I mentioned, the 60% makeup of those, 90+% have combat experience already, and they take up the summer training on in a big, big way. This next piece, when we talk about athletics, it is extraordinarily important that we take this on. And here's what I would tell you that's changed, that I didn't have a appreciation for, if you will, until I came back in this job. And that is that this is different. The landscape of athletics in America has changed over the last decade or two. And so, here's the first time I got an idea. The new cadets come in on our day. Day 2 and day 3, we break them in half. They take their diagnostic physical fitness test. Number of push-ups you can do in 2 minutes, number of sit-ups in 2 minutes, and a 2-mile run. Go down to Target Hill Field. We still run the same route, past the old sewer system, which is it's intentional. We hope it's about 90 degrees. They come out like thoroughbreds out of the gate, and a couple of 100 yards down the road there, they're starting to look for taxi cabs. And they're having a real difficult time. I mean, their viewpoint is that anything over 100 yards ought to be a relay. 50% will fail one or more of those 3 events. And here's what I'm telling you. That's really an indictment of society, because there's not a single state in our nation now that requires 3 years of PE to graduate from high school. Not one. Indiana was the last holdout, and they gave up the ghost a couple years ago. Then when you get in great intercollegiate athletes, we have a few in this room tonight, now we're into the year-end sports stuff. So you could be all-state football, all-state swimmer, tennis, whatever it happens to be, but that's what you do. And you haven't been doing the kinds of things that in a large way we're going to ask you to do as a commissioned officer. Now the good news is that after 6 weeks we retest them, and on the last 3 years, 95 to 97% will pass all of those events. It's not a problem. The 2 or 3% that struggle go into a special commandant's program that meets behind his house at 5:30 every morning. That program doesn't last very long, by the way. So they all kind of get into this competitive. Next slide. Our sports clubs, as you can see, there's 26 of them. We're terrific when it comes to all this. We had 6 national championships in 2007. We had 5 last year. As I mentioned, the rugby team already competing at the national level. We will continue to do that sort of thing. And we're very, very proud of them. And I appreciate your support, because in a very large way, that's supported by donor dollars as well as time goes on. Next slide. How are we doing intercollegiately? We have really ramped it up. And we're really getting better. I'm going to talk football here in a moment, but I would tell you that some of these other sports have really taken it on, and it's wonderful to see this ethos of winning coming back. What's another difference that I saw when I came there? And it's been going on again, going back to the approach to athletics or physical fitness that this nation's taken on. And that is that I was uncertain when I watched some of these kids participate either at the club level or intercollegiately, how much they understood how difficult and painful that you had to go through and work to win. Because they've grown up since they were this big, getting a trophy for showing up. Think about it. Little League, soccer, here's a trophy. Thanks for playing. Now, let me just tell you, that breeds a certain approach to things, and we were not immune to it at West Point. And some of the coaches discovered that well before me. Actually, they're the ones that told me about it, and they've had to work through that. Now, that's not across the board, but it's something that our coaches have taken on in a big, big way, and you've seen some tremendous success that we've made in a number of areas as well. Patriot League women's basketball, they won the league last year. They got into it this year. The coach didn't even think they'd play 500 ball. And the girls thought they were better than they were. And so they went out and won 19 games. I mean, that's kind of what happens to the volleyball team. They lost all their seniors the year before. They had 4 left. They're not much bigger than me. And they went out and they played American down here. If you saw it, the American came up there, and let me tell you my little vignette. Volleyball is extraordinarily popular in America if you don't follow it. And I didn't until I took this job. So the American comes down to play us the last game of the regular season to see who wins the Patriot League. All their girls show up. They range from 6 feet to 6'8". It says American across here. None of them can speak English. That's right here in this town. I'm not exaggerating. They're Eastern Europeans, wonderful girls, and we smoked them, and we beat them. And it was because our youngsters had figured out this notion of how to win, and they walked on the court expecting to win. And I'm telling you, it's feeding on itself, and it's making huge differences in our athletic program as well. And we're going to continue to do those kinds of things. Our varsity athletes, I would also tell you, are not separated from the core. Of the 38 major cadet leadership positions in the Corps, 6 of them were held by our Corps Squad athletes this year, including Deputy Commander Sally White, an All-Patriot League swimmer that we had as well. So we're very proud of them. They're very connected to the Corps, and we'll continue to do things. We have some that excel in a big way. Next slide here shows a couple of Olympians. That's Coach Kagan there on the left. He heads, if you don't know it, he's our leadership chair. He's in his 2nd year. He comes up several times a year to talk to cadets. He came up 3.5 weeks after the Beijing Games to talk to our 1st and 2nd class about winning. And I'll give you the shorthand version. Here's the executive version. It took him 45 minutes, give me 60 seconds. He gave it all when he walked out. How do you take 15 grown men with huge egos that can fill up this room, and their bank accounts are bigger than that? How do you bring them together in a common purpose to do something bigger than themselves? And the bottom line was, it's leadership. And everything I learned about leadership, I learned as a cadet here at West Point. That was his message. And that's what we're all about, being the preeminent leadership institution in our nation, indeed internationally. And he continues to do that. He'll be up next week to hand out an award called Character Through Sports. Next slide.